All right. Roger asked me to start off this series of talks on the 7 rays. The talk tonight will be on the Theosophical perspective. Up until the time of Madame Blavatsky, I'm not aware that anyone talked about 7 rays, at least not in that term. And even then, it wasn't something that was made very clear. And I'll point that out in just a moment. I guess probably the first real indication of them was in The Secret Doctrine. At several different points she talked about 7 rays being the way that cosmic energy manifests in the manifested universe. And that comes through a single ray, but that it diverges into 7. Just to show you how difficult it was to try to understand, I'm going to read from, this is actually after The Secret Doctrine. This is something that she published after The Secret Doctrine, so it was a little more clear than what was in The Secret Doctrine, but just listen. What are Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva but the triple ray that emanates directly from the light of the world? The 3 gods, with their goddesses, are the 3 dual representations of Purusha, the spirit, and Prakriti, matter. These 6 are synthesized by Svayambhuva, the self-existent, unmanifested deity. They are the only symbols personifying the unseen presence in every phenomenon of nature. Then she quotes, and she doesn't say where it's from, but I assume it's from the commentaries of the stanzas on Xian. And she actually has to insert some words to even make it somewhat comprehensible. So she's quoting and inserting words here and there. The 7 regions of Bhumi hang by golden threads, beams or rays, from the spiritual center sun, or God. Higher than all, a watcher for each region, the Suras come down this beam. They cross the 6 and reach the 7th, our Earth. They are our Mother Earth's, Bhumi's supporters, or guardians. The 8th watches over the 7 watchers. I know, if you can make anything of that, I can. So that's what, I point this out, point that just to give you an indication of what early investigators of the ancient wisdom teachings had to deal with as far as understanding these 7 rays, which no one had talked about before. She kind of introduces it in her writing, but in such a manner that it is pretty incomprehensible. So, for many years, we really didn't have anything that we could grasp in a tangible form. One of the earliest was C.W. Leadbeater. I don't know if any of you have read his book, The Masters in the Path. How many of you have read this book?
I own it.
Okay.
Does that count?
Well, read it.
Halfway.
Read it. I should probably point out that I owe a lot to this book. It was in 1975. That was, let's see, 33 years ago. My math is correct.
Cancel.
No, 38 years. Hello, 38 years. My math is not correct. 38 years ago, I stumbled across this book in a little metaphysical bookstore on Charleston. Charleston and Maryland Parkway. It was actually on Maryland Parkway near Charleston. And I took it off the shelf and I started reading it. And have you ever had an experience where you get that shiver down the back of your spine? I had been searching for several years, well, really from the time I was a teenager, I knew there was some kind of teaching or philosophy out there somewhere that explained how things work, how this universe operates, how life works, really. I said, I know it's out there somewhere. Well, as soon as I read the first chapter of this, I said, that's it, that's it. That's what I've been looking for. So I read the entire book in 2 days. I stayed up late at night until I was bleary-eyed. I read the entire book in 2 days, and it totally changed my life. So I owe, really, my education, or the beginning of it, at least in this lifetime, to that book. So in this book, C.W. Leadbeater talks about an incident that occurred, would have to have been around 1884 or 1885, probably 1885, when he was at Adyar in India at the Theosophical headquarters, and he was left there with only a few other individuals. Madame Blavatsky was traveling and moving around a lot. Colonel Alcott, who was the president of the Theosophical Society, spent all of his available time in Ceylon, Sri Lanka now, and in other Buddhist countries in an effort to revive the interest in Buddhism. It had flagged incredibly. And the current interest, the level of interest that even in Buddhist countries exists today, is partly due to his influence. The Christian missionaries at that time, both from Europe, mostly England, and the United States, had done their work very well as far as convincing some of these people in foreign countries that their religion was of no use, that it was pure nonsense, and that they had something better to offer. Well, the Theosophical Society, and especially Alcott, he took that on as his personal mission to teach them, no, you have a philosophy that is far superior. And if you will live it, it has everything that you need to gain freedom from the wheel of life and death. Life, the wheel of reincarnation. So he was a major influence. So Leadbeater was left for months at a time at the headquarters with Damodar was one of the people, one of the Indian chelas there, and let's see, who was the other? Mr. Cooper Oakley was the other person, and they, in the evenings, would go up on the roof of the headquarters building to get some fresh air after the sun went down. And once in a while, the master DK, he wasn't a master in those days, he was still a chela, would appear to them in astral form and would teach them. And during one of these sessions, according to Leadbeater, they asked him about the 7 rays, and he smiled and said, well, he said, I can't really tell you everything there is to know about it until you've reached a very high level of initiation. He said, would you rather that I tell you what I am allowed to tell you, or would you rather wait until you can understand it a little more fully? And they said, well, we'll take whatever we can get right now. So he gave them some teaching, and I'll show you, explain to you a little bit about how rudimentary it was. So here's how, according to Leadbeater, DK laid out these 7 rays. The main characteristic, he said, of the first ray was Fohat. Fohat, which is, no one knows what Fohat is. It is the universal energy. It is, in the physical world, it relates to electricity, to light, and anything that has to do with that form, and prana. Those are all different forms of foha. But the general term on the cosmic levels of all that produces that phenomenon, the source of all that is called foha. So that was the first main characteristic. Second one was wisdom. Okay, at least that one was a little more understandable. Third ray was akasha. Akasha. Okay. Fourth gets even more. It's the birth of Horus. Now we're going back into Egyptian mythology and religion. And fifth was fire. Sixth was the incarnation of deity. And the seventh he didn't give them one for. So this was the first set of characteristics of the seven rays. Now, as far as the main way that it expresses in the world, he didn't give an example for the first, but in the second he said Raja Yoga, and that makes sense. Third he said was astrology. Astrology. So that's pretty good. Fourth was Hatha Yoga. Hatha Yoga. Fifth was material alchemy. Alchemy, but in material, so really more chemistry. Sixth, and that makes sense too. Sixth was Bhakti Yoga. That makes total sense. Bhakti Yoga. Seventh was ceremonial magic. And then he gave a list of the religions that exemplify each of these. He said the first was Brahmanical. In other words, the priestly caste of the Hindu religion. Second was Buddhism. Third was the Chaldean. Fourth was Egyptian. Fifth was Zoroastrian. Sixth was Christianity. Seventh was elemental worship. Do you know what elemental worship is? It's nature spirits. It's like the Druids and the what's the word? Shamans. Any of these kind of tribal ceremonial religions where they invoke different elemental spirits of nature. And in truth, that's how all magic works. We won't get into it, but let me just, as a side note here, say that the Master of K.H., in one of his letters to Sinnett and Hume, said every thought is enveloped by an elemental. The moment you think that thought, an elemental latches onto that, and depending on the quality of that thought and the force is how long it will persist. And it affects everyone that is in that area or that thought is directed to. So when Alice Bailey or Master D.K. says that energy follows thought, that's exactly what happens. All right, so at least we've got a little bit of an outline here. And I'm setting up the stage here so that Roger can give you some really, really good stuff later. So another thing Leadbeater said in his book was that all life which exists on our chain of worlds passes through and belongs to one of the 7 rays, each having 7 subdivisions. So one thing he pointed out that they learned from DK was that in the cosmos, which is beyond our solar system, there are 49 rays, and that there are 7 main rays, and each has 7 sub-rays, but that the 7 rays we experience here comprise only one of those rays in the cosmos realm, cosmic realm. So we get to experience only a portion of reality, you might say, on a cosmic level. It's all we can deal with, isn't it? We've got our hands full now, so if they unloaded all all of these different rays on us, we'd be completely discombobulated. So we're given a challenge as it is. We're cribbed, cabined, and confined down to a point where we can at least operate and start to comprehend somewhat the laws of nature and how everything works. And then gradually it expands. And as we reach another plateau, another realm opens up. So that's exactly what happens. Every entity, every conscious being in our world comes through into the, actually in our planetary system, because there are beings on other planets too that we are not aware of. Every single conscious being, and that includes minerals, comes through one of those 7 rays. Right from the very beginning. It's not only humans that are affected by these 7 rays, it's everything. So every plant has some kind, is affected primarily by one of those 7 rays. Every mineral by one of those 7 rays. Every animal by one of those 7 rays. And one of the things that Leadbeater did was to investigate at least the mineral kingdom, to find out at the height, at the apex of each one, what is the representative for each of the 7 rays. So this is what he came up with as far as the representatives of the mineral kingdom for each ray. The first ray is diamond, which includes all the colors, doesn't it? Because it's like a prism. Second is sapphire. The third ray is emerald. The fourth ray is jasper, and I have to admit I don't know much about jasper. Fifth is topaz. Sixth is ruby. Seventh is amethyst. So according to him, these minerals each represent the apotheosis in the mineral kingdom of their respective ray. They reach the highest point. So then when that consciousness, in some future date, goes into a plant form, it still maintains whatever ray it was on before. And it goes through. So each of the plants, and no one that I know has ever taken the time or trouble to identify which plants are on which rays, but it stays the same. And same through the animals. So at each level, that individual consciousness is mostly influenced by a particular ray. And then in the animal kingdom, obviously, and no one's done the research on that either, we don't know, as far as I'm aware, which animals represent which kingdoms, but we do know that, for example, the very top, at the apex, so to speak, of the animal kingdom are, for example, horses, dogs, cats, certain apes, all of the apes, elephant, whales,
Bears.
bears, and bears,
Look at the
lions and tigers and bears.
no, but well, if you go back through the Indian way, that's where they get their area. I forget the word of it is, but anyway, like an American Indian man, as the Indians grow up, they all have what they have, the totem pole, and they have those things that are different, perspective for
That's
it.
only because they didn't have elephants.
That's true,
I
that
don't
started
know.
there.
Whales, dolphins, anyway, those are some of the, I don't know about bears, we'll have to check on that.
That's on the totem pole.
No, I-
Yeah. Yeah.
We can agree to disagree. That's the beauty of this teaching, is that everybody gets to see it in their own way. But the point is that each animal is on a specific ray. Same happens all through the human kingdom. All humans are influenced by a particular ray, for the most part. Now, we don't get until Alice Bailey and the later work into the fact that there are 5 different rays that influence each individual. But we do find in the work of another theosophist, Jeffrey Hodson, a little more comprehensive rundown or explanation of the different rays. And he says that there is not only a primary ray, but a secondary ray. Then later on we find that it gets even more complicated than that. And Roger, I'm glad Roger's going to teach all of that for you.
Right.
Jeffrey Hodson wrote a book called The 7 Human Temperaments, and it's strictly about the 7 rays. And by that time, it got a little more understandable. So, based mostly on his work, but drawing from a few others, I'm going to go over kind of what was the understanding in the middle of the 1900s, for example, more or less. All right, so we still have 7 rays. Nobody ever changed the number. That's good. But as far as religion, let's talk about religion. Now it is pretty much understood that Hinduism in general is the first ray. So that stayed the same. Buddhism, the second. The Chaldean or Egyptian, the third. And the Orphic form of the Egyptian religion is the fourth. Zoroastrian, the fifth. Christianity, the sixth. And seventh, instead of elemental worship, we've now decided that it's masonry and religious ritual. All forms of ritual. So that's the religious form that exemplifies each of these rays. And I think that's pretty standardized at this point. If anyone has a question that's pertinent to what I'm presenting right now, or if I need to clarify something, let me know. At the end, we'll have a little more general discussion, and you can ask anything you want.
I just had one. When you mentioned that we all, coming in here, we're only on one of the rays, but we have these 7 different aspects. Do you know which ray that is?
Well, each individual is different. And
right, I understand that, but I thought we're either coming all in through one first ray, and we're all 7 aspects of that in this universe, or we're coming in through 2. Maybe I didn't understand what you were saying.
Okay, actually that tells me I need to back up a little bit and explain something that Leadbeater pointed out, which is very good. And that is that the 7 rays are connected to the 3 aspects of the solar logos, the first, second, and third aspect of the solar logos. So obviously the first ray is exemplified by the first aspect, represented by God the Father in the Christian religion. The second aspect of the solar logos is the second, and that's represented by the sun in Christianity. The third is represented by the Holy Ghost. Now, it's this third emanation, or this third outpouring of the solar logos that creates all of the lower worlds. And it includes the third, so the third ray as manifested includes third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh rays. So the first ray is first ray, second ray is by itself, and then the third includes all of the other rays with it. So when we have, when we get close to the end of our human evolution, the initiations that we go through, an initiation is very particular. It is the beginning of a new phase. To initiate something is to start. So you have reached, it's kind of like graduation from 8th grade, and you have a commencement exercise. That means you've terminated one stage and you are commencing the next stage of your work. It's the same thing with an initiation. Let me just point out very quickly that there has been a lot of talk about initiations, and so can initiate you, give you an initiation. Well, in my understanding and in my experience, it doesn't happen that way. If you go through a major initiation, and there are major and minor ones, if you go through a major initiation, there is a complete change in consciousness, and you cannot help but realize that. Even if you don't remember any of the details of what happened on other planes, in your physical brain consciousness, you will wake up one day and you will not be the same person that went to sleep the night before. It's that drastic. So just be aware that that's very, very succinct what happens. So once you get to the higher initiations, and it's fairly high, actually it's at the 6th level is where you have chohans. So you can be an adept, a master, without even being yet at the chohan level. And I assume that that's what Kutumi was talking about when he said, I am not yet a full adept. Well, he had reached the 5th initiation, or he wouldn't be an adept at all. But he wasn't yet a chohan. Well, now he is. He is one of the chohans. And so there is a chohan for each ray. And that is, those have to have achieved the 6th initiation, the 6th level of consciousness. And let's see, Leadbeater told us who the heads of these rays were.
Moria.
Moria, number 1. Number 2?
Yeah.
No.
No?
Is Kutumi, KH. Maitreya is actually above this level. And the Buddha, both are above this level. This is kind of intermediate between human and the higher realms of the hierarchy. 3rd is the Venetian.
Right.
We don't know a lot about these other masters.
When we have our classes, I'll bring that one in.
Okay. 4 is Serapis. He was one of the early teachers of Alcott in New York City. When he first met at HPB, he would receive letters and notes, sometimes just a few words. They sometimes just appeared out of nowhere. Sometimes they actually arrived in the mail. But they were very archaic in the language and in the calligraphy. If you ever see copies of them, they're incredibly old-fashioned. I mean, like very, very old, hundreds of years old in the way they talk and in the way they write and the symbols that they use. So Serapis was connected with the Brotherhood of Luxor. There are 3 centers of adepts or of teachers of humanity, 3 that we know of. There may be more, but there are 3 that we know of. One is in Tibet, or who knows where it is now. I suspect it's still in North India, in Kashmir. I don't know for sure, but I assume they have moved out of Chinese-controlled Tibet. The second is in Egypt, and it's called the Brotherhood of Luxor. The third is in the Yucatan Peninsula, and we know next to nothing about that one, unless you know something. But these add-ups are very close mouthed. They don't share a whole lot of information, but for good reason, because they don't want us to just be enamored of information. They are far more interested in your moral development, in your development of character, than they are in anything else. The learning will come when you have need of it. But until you develop the moral character, it does no good. It actually can be an impediment, as we will see. We're going to look at some of the weaknesses of the different rays, and those can be very instructive in understanding the 7 rays and what we can or can't do with them. So, as we ascend and become a master or a chohan, and many of the disciples actually start this before they get to that point. All that are primarily on the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th rays have to switch to one of the other 3 rays by the 7th initiation. By the 8th initiation, the 3rd has to switch over to either 1 or 2, and by the 9th initiation, which is the Lord of the World, then you have to switch to the 1st ray. So, do you get the picture? They all are converging back to 1 ray in preparation for entering a different phase in this cosmic evolution. So, in Alice Bailey's work, she, in Discipleship for a New Age, once in a while you'll see a letter to one of the disciples, and it mentions that he or she is making an effort to switch rays. It's not easy. You can imagine. It's kind of like switching your entire way of looking at everything. Instead of being scientific in nature and mathematical, you're all of a sudden going to become an artist now. Of course, Leonardo da Vinci could do that. But for most people, it's like a major, major operation to change your ray. And it takes several lifetimes. It doesn't happen in 20 short weeks. And
after Roger's course.
That's right. After Roger's done, you'll be able to switch back to 1 hour as quickly as you want. So that's what we have to look forward to. And I want to point out that as students, we really, really need to look far into the future. Don't forget about this lifetime, but set your sights way into the future. In fact, if you're seriously a student, your goal really should be to become an adept, a master. Not necessarily in this lifetime, but if you don't make the steps in this lifetime, you'll never achieve. That's the problem. There aren't very many people in this world who are willing to look that far into the future. They are barely able to look into next week. But to look 3 and 4 and 5 lifetimes from now and say, this is my goal for the next several lifetimes, and I'm going to work arduously on that every single day of the year. And I know that I won't make the goal this time, but I will at least be on my way. I'm at least headed that direction. That really should be your goal. Otherwise, what is your goal? It's probably personally motivated. We'll talk about that later. All right. So, Serapis is the head of the 4th ray. Hilarion, who is apparently Greek by birth and is also
He's the adept Paul.
and is part of the Brotherhood of Luxor. Sixth, according to Leadbeater, is
Jesus.
Master Jesus. Seventh is
Saint Germain.
Roger's favorite, Saint Germain. Otherwise known as Rakazi, has a couple of other names,
He's
but
got two Rogers in his prior life.
Roger Bacon and Roger, who was the other one?
We'll go over it later.
Okay. Oh, that's right. Well, we have to leave something for later.
Who did you say the fifth ray was? I didn't.
Fifth was Hilarion, Hilarion, Hilarion. All right, so each one of these rays, as far as the human kingdom, and not just human, because these Chohans are in charge of angels and men, and elementals, and plants, and animals. They are Chohans, lords, and that's the Christian term, Lord, of all of these kingdoms. So they're very busy individuals. They have a responsibility not just for humanity, but for all life on our planet in their particular realm. They do have helpers, and we can be helpers if we fit ourselves to the task. But we have to do some serious work in order to make that happen. All right, so let's talk about the qualities, the major qualities of the seven rays. First ray is willpower. Will, just will, and strength. It is courage and self-reliance. And it is best exemplified by the soldier, the military man, and especially the generals, those who are in charge. Rulers, governors, and statesmen. Those people who have vision, who know how to direct. They're very concise. Precise, concise, they don't waste words. They don't waste time trying to make you feel good. They have a purpose, they have a goal, and they tell you exactly what needs to be done, and they expect you to do it. And they don't want any excuses, they don't want anything but you to do the work. The weaknesses, well, let's go over weaknesses later.
I love the weaknesses.
I do too, because I think you learn a lot from that. Second, let's go over the qualities of second ray. Qualities are universal love, unconditional love, wisdom, intuition, and kindness, loving kindness. It is this sense of brotherhood that we are all one family, and it's all encompassing, that none of us is separate from anyone else.
Sounds like the Theosophical Society to me.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And it's the religion is Buddhism. Okay, third ray has the qualities of adaptability, tact, intelligent action, and dignity. These are the movers and shakers in the world. They are intelligent, they're insightful, they grasp big concepts instantaneously, and they are able to get other people involved in the work and get them to work. These are people who they try to be all things to all people. They love to be involved and to be directing and running things and getting stuff done. They're diplomats, they're directors, they're judges. Fourth ray is the ray of harmony and balance, of beauty and rhythm. Everything. And notice it's the one in the middle. Number 4 is the middle ray. So it's all about harmony, balance, and beauty. So it's exemplified by the artist, the mediator, and the interpreter. People who try to get a balance or try to get everyone on the same page. Fifth ray has as qualities analysis, logic, accuracy, and patience. And it's exemplified by the scientist, the mathematician, and the lawyer. Well, good lawyers. These people are very, very precise. Sixth ray, the qualities are devotion, worship, loyalty, and ardent enthusiasm. Ardent, burning enthusiasm. Exemplified by the devotee, the evangelist, the mystic, and the martyr. Seventh has for qualities order, method, ritual, and organization. Again, everything very, very strictly controlled. And it's exemplified by the priest, the magician, the banker, and the producer. Well, I forgot to tell you,
Number 2.
second was exemplified by the spiritual teacher, the monk or nun, and the reformers. People who take whatever exists, a religion or something, and try to purify it, try to make it more, take it back to what it was originally, the reformer. All right, let's talk about these weaknesses. All right, what do you think some of the weaknesses would be for the first grade?
Ego.
Ego, very pride,
Inflexibility.
intolerance, like I got here. What else?
Tyrant.
Tyranny. Boy, you guys are just nailing these. And thirst for power. So these would be the weaknesses of the first grade individual. Second ray individual, what are the weaknesses? What do you think? Someone who is kindly, if they're, you know, expressing the highest qualities is wisdom and kindness and love. What do you think some of the weaknesses might be?
Martyrs.
It can be self-pity.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Self-pity, sensuality, sentimentality, almost maudlin sometimes. You know, family, country, this real emotional kind of sentimentality about everything. Impracticality sometimes. They can be very impractical because they tend more to be visionaries and to live in the ideal. And sometimes this everyday world is just a little too much, and so they have a tendency, it's one of the reasons that they have a tendency to become monks and nuns. They sometimes just want to escape. This world is too much, so they say, okay, let me go to some place where it's much more quiet. Oh, okay, now I'm fine.
Would a closed mind fit into that?
Yes, yes. Yes, exactly. They neglect their material needs sometimes. All right, third ray. This is the one who is intelligent action. What would be some of the weaknesses of this person who is very... This is an interesting one. This is a ray, Alice Bailey, I'm going to jump ahead just a little bit here because this is too interesting to skip. She says of the third ray that some of these individuals have, for so many lifetimes, woven these very complicated scenarios to obfuscate their own actions and failings that they can't see straight anymore. Absolutely cannot see what is right, what is real and what's not real at all. I mean, it's just completely, if you know some of these people, they never explain anything concisely, ever. They will beat around the bush, even if they're trying to tell you something very, very simple. They never just come right out and say it. The first-rate person would take 3 words to say something, and that would be it. The third-rate person, if they have this weakness, will spend half an hour, and at the end, you have no idea what they said because they didn't say anything.
Politician.
And politics, exactly. That's exactly what it is. So this is a major problem for them because they somehow have to overcome this.
Like maybe they have too much knowledge and they're just giving out too much information?
No, it has everything to do with ego. They hate to be wrong
So they'll
or
say it
to
all.
be thought of as not being completely in control. And they're manipulators. They manipulate people, and they use various methods to do it. And one of it is this BS method to just create so much smoke that no one can see clearly. And then they stand back and they say, well, what's wrong with you? I told you exactly the way it was. And you're just, and you don't know what to say because they really know how to make you look like you're the idiot.
But Terry, do they just, it's a consciousness issue, and they don't actually see it.
No, they don't.
No, exactly.
No, and that's why Alice Bailey said this. They have
don't see
a
it.
very difficult path ahead because they're going to somehow have to get out of this. And the first thing is to admit that it even exists, and they're not
Exactly.
willing to do that usually.
That's right.
Very, very difficult. Pride and ego are the major stumbling blocks for every single ray. Pride and ego. All right, 4th ray. Oh, the other thing about the 3rd ray is intrigue. They love intrigue. They love to create these, set people up. And we, I don't know if well, sure, I dare say it. The Jesuits are the 3rd ray in action. They stand behind the scenes of the Catholic Church, and they create all of these little intrigues and scenarios. And they're extremely powerful, but no one knows what's going on. They create all of this stuff, but they make sure that you can't trace it back to them. So that's a 3rd ray weakness. 4th ray, these are the artists, the people who want harmony, want everything to be in balance. So what would be the weaknesses?
Just kidding.
Chaos.
Self-indulgence is one of them. They love beauty, and so they will sometimes become extremely vain as far as their own physical looks, and will try desperately to remain beautiful through their whole life. Even when they're 95 years old, they're going to the beauty parlor 2 times a week and trying desperately to remain young and beautiful. So deceit, self-indulgence, they tend to be overly dramatic sometimes. They live in a fantasy world sometimes because they can't stand the fact that this world, the way they see it, is out of balance. They see it as being like this, and they can't stand it, so they get angry about it. It's not the way it should be. It should not be like this. It should be like this, just like it is in the paintings that I create. And they sometimes become so fixated on this that they will create some kind of a fantasy world that they live in and just retire because they can't stand the chaos, what they view as chaos. What they don't understand is that there is nothing out of balance in the universe. It's perfectly balanced. But you have to factor in karma. That's what is missing in their world because they don't have the vision to raise their consciousness to a plane where they can see the whole picture, including past karma and the effects today that were caused by something thousands of years ago. If you can do that, everything is perfectly, perfectly balanced. And then they wouldn't fret about it. They often are addicted to glamour. Fifth ray. Now this is the scientist, the mathematician. They're into analysis and logic. What would be their weaknesses?
Critical?
Very hypercritical, yes.
Common sense.
Okay, lack common sense. They tend to be very rigid. And if you can't prove something to them, they're not interested. So they don't see things that are beyond their realm of consciousness. They're not even willing to admit it. It's funny that scientists are having to change their way of looking at things now. They're realizing that there's far more than meets the eye. And they're having to rethink, but some of most scientists still kind of follow the old methods, and only the more advanced ones are the ones who are adopting some of our ways. They tend to be cold.
Yes.
And to believe in separateness instead of all-inclusiveness. Instead of brotherhood, it's each man for himself. I take care of myself and my family, you take care of yours. I don't want to have to pay taxes for your kids to go to school. I'll take care of my needs and you take care of yourself. That's not the highest ones. These are the weaknesses for the people who are still learning. Miserliness. They tend to live in fear and in scarcity. There's only so much resources in the world, and once they're gone, they're gone. And so I have to be very careful about my resources, financial and otherwise.
Competitive in that sense?
Competitive, not so much. Some can be. It can be. But it's not a primary weakness of theirs. Sixth ray. Okay. This is yeah. You laugh. This is yeah. Sixth ray has a tough road to hoe, so to speak. As far as spiritual growth, fanaticism. We all know what.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We all know. We see religious fanatics. This is the person who, when they are offended by something that individuals or the government does, will pour gasoline over themselves and light a match. This is how dramatic they can be, and how emotional and how one-pointed they can be in their fervor. They see it as zeal, as being a good quality, but we don't. We see it as a weakness. Impulsiveness, just snap judgments. Everything is not thought through there. It's a very emotional ray. And so everything is impulsive. There's no real thought to it. And even if there's time to think, it comes back to the emotional. Stephanie had a great thing. She said that someone was talking about how someone else had done something that made her angry. And she says, the more I thought about it, the angrier I got. So she was using the mental to reinforce the emotional part. And that's sixth ray. It's just this emotional reaction to everything. Obsessiveness, being just getting something in your mind and you cannot let it go. And you obsess, and it just gets bigger and bigger, and it's not accurate at all. And the more you obsess about it, the more inaccurate it gets, and the bigger it gets. And the more it affects you as far as your health and your emotional well-being. Alice Bailey, by the way, says that the fourth and the sixth rays, for the most part, will transform or transfer at some point to the second ray. So fourth and sixth, generally, at some point in their path, will transfer over to the second ray. Seventh ray, this is the priest, the magician, the ceremony and ritual. What would be some of their weaknesses?
They don't have any.
They don't have it.
Well,
Not in their mind. They don't. Pretentiousness. Oh, that's one. Love of drama. Love of ostentation. They can be very ostentatious. I'll give you an example. One of Leadbeater's projects in the early 1900s was to take a relatively unknown branch of the Catholic Church. It was called the Old Catholic Church, which came through Holland. That was a Catholic church, but they didn't subscribe to the idea that the Pope was their master. So they were a Catholic church, but they were not a Roman Catholic church. Anyway, he and some of his friends got involved in this church and basically took it over and decided they were going to make it a vehicle for the Lord Maitreya operating through Krishnamurti. And they built it up somewhat, but there was an enormous amount of ritual in it. And the vestments, if you've ever read the book, The Science of the Sacraments, Leadbeater really got into this whole ceremonial thing. And the vestments they wear are magnificent.
yeah.
But if you go to one of their services these days, there are more people in the sanctuary than there are in the pews. And you may have 2 bishops, 3 priests, and 2 deacons, and only 4 little old ladies and men sitting in the audience. And it's all about this drama. It's all about these vestments. And this is very seventh rate. So I'm trying to give you some concrete examples so that it kind of solidifies in your mind of things that we hopefully will avoid ourselves, because we're all guilty. I am. I'm guilty of at least 8 of these. And that's what we have to do. We have to be absolutely honest. The one thing that is difficult for the third-rate person is to be honest. You've lied to yourself for so long that you believe the lies. And in fact, you don't know what's true and what's false anymore. I have a friend who is getting old enough that he can't he used to be very good about lying because he could remember what he had said to what person. But as he gets older, he realizes that doesn't work very well because he can't remember anymore what lie he told to which person.
It's called retribution.
So we have to be careful. It always catches up to us. Again, love of power, extravagance, no expenses spared, regimentation. This whole everything has to be just so, and if anything is out of order, they go to pieces. So that's the 7th ray. Oh, by the way, I forgot to put on here. Yeah, I did say the banker and accountants are 7th ray. Everything has to balance to the penny. It has to be exactly in order. So that's very much a 7th ray occupation. The human principle, and we're going to wind up here soon and let you ask any other questions you may have. The human principles of the 7 rays are, for the first ray, Atma, the very highest spiritual aspect that we can claim as human beings. That doesn't mean that there aren't realms above that, but as far as an individual human, that represents our highest spiritual nature, Atma. Second is Buddhi, which is dimension. Third is the higher manas, the higher mind, which is not concrete, it is abstract. It is where, for the most part, the masters operate. Masters, by the way, do not operate on the astral plane, except in rare instances. They have some of their pupils that will work with people on the astral plane. But as we learn from the Alice Bailey teachings, one of our goals as students is to eliminate virtually completely our astral body. To be completely dominant over all your emotions. That means there is no emotional reaction to anything. Total equanimity.
Sort of blind, huh?
No, not at all. And I'm glad you pointed at that, Rosalba, right?
What? Rosella.
Ro
Rosella.
Oh, Rosella. I'm sorry. I'm glad you pointed that out, because most people think, yeah, that would be very bland. Without emotions, who would I be? I wouldn't even be human. I would be Spock on Star Trek, right?
Yeah, just sort of blind.
But no, it's not that at all, because you have to do that before you can awaken or contact your higher self.
Wouldn't that be just control, self-control?
No, it's detachment.
No.
It's not controlling your emotions, because most people try desperately to control their emotions, and they can sort of do it to a degree, but all it does is bottle it up.
It's to be then.
You actually have to sort through all of your old emotions that you stuffed in this bag on your back, and for some people it's a bag as big as this room. You have to actually sort through and eliminate. You have to work through all of those. All of them. And not create any new ones. So that really is, and it's a project of several decades, and for some people several lifetimes. So just be aware that that's part of the future if you're serious about this work. This is not, nursery school for fun and games and drawing and coloring. This is for serious students if you're really planning to become one of the adepts. Otherwise, I'm not sure what your goal is, but I would suggest that you do some thinking about it and figure out what your real goal is. If you want to help humanity, let me read real quickly here. I have a tendency to talk. This is something that HPB wrote at the very end of her lifetime. And it was found in her desk after she died. As far as we know, it was never published anywhere. And no one knows exactly when she wrote it or why it came about. But to me, it's one of the most important things she ever wrote. And this is what was found on that piece of paper. There is a road, steep and thorny, beset with perils of every kind, but yet a road, and it leads to the very heart of the universe. I can tell you how to find those who will show you the secret gateway that opens inward only and closes fast behind the neophyte forevermore. There is no danger that dauntless courage cannot conquer. There is no trial that spotless purity cannot pass through. There is no difficulty that strong intellect cannot surmount. Let me repeat those three qualifications. Dauntless courage, spotless purity, and strong intellect. For those who win onwards, there is reward past all telling, the power to bless and save humanity. Is she not talking about being an adept? For those who fail, there are other lives in which success may come. All right, well.
After she passed, didn't she become an adept? I think I read something similar about that.
Oh, there have been so many stories about her. Annie Besant said that the daughter of Chakravarti, one of her gurus, was the reincarnation of HPV, but then a few years later she quit mentioning that, and it just kind of, she didn't say it again. Then years later, Leadbeaters said, told a group of people that HPV was in incarnation again, but that she had chosen not to be involved with the Theosophical Society. And that was the last we heard of that. So I don't put a whole lot of emphasis in any of these. All I know is that Annie Besant did receive the very last message that we know of from KH in writing. A very short letter, and it was very critical of her. And one of the things he said to her was, HPV cannot return so quickly. She has other work to do.
Oh.
So.
What ray was she while she was here?
Oh, very much first ray. Very much a first ray. I want to point out something too. Moria being on the first ray, we don't know a whole lot about many of the adepts, but we get a little bit about their personality from the book, The Masters, what is it called? The Masters in the Path. Oh, I didn't bring the other book. The Mahatma letters to AP Synod. We get a little bit of quite a bit of the personality of Moria and of Kutumi. Moria being on the first ray, he was very precise. And Kutumi being on the second, he was very easy. Well, he didn't want to offend people. He was very careful to explain things carefully and to try to realize that they didn't have the ability to grasp things very quickly. So when he went, after about a year of teaching, sending letters to AP Synod in Hume, he went on a 3-month retreat. Well, this retreat, they've never told us what it was, but it's obviously some kind of 90-day initiation or something, but he was away from his physical body for 90 days. It was guarded over by some of his chelas, but he was gone. And Moria agreed very reluctantly to take over the correspondence during that 3-month period, and at first it was very terse, a few sentences here and there. They would write this long, long thing, explanation of how they understood a certain concept, and they said, did we get that right? And they said, can you clarify what we've said? And he said, how can I clarify what you haven't got? And that was it. They would write 3 pages or 6 pages, and he would write 6 words on it. And so that's just the way he was. He was very cut and dry.
In other words, we're idiots.
But he did warm up a little bit, and he actually, after one letter, he said, I have written the longest letter I've ever written in my life, but because I do it for my brother, I'm and these two had the most incredible relationship. Even though Moria, being the military man, he was extremely fond of KH, and you could tell that when he was gone for 90 days, he missed him terribly. And he mentions it in some of the letters. And he says something about he didn't want anyone to breathe a word of discontent about his brother who is sleeping, he said. And he refers to him as the light of my soul. And that's pretty sentimental for a first-rate person. So their relationship and the love they had for each other was incredible. They would poke fun at each other though sometimes. That's what I love about it, is they do have a sense of humor. When KH was back, and again, trying not to disturb too much people's egos, Moria wrote a letter one time and said, I'm afraid my brother is becoming a regular Western miss. Meaning that he was being way too easy on these guys. But there you go. Okay, so any questions? I've kept you here for quite a while. So.
Wonderful.
No questions, no comments?
Lots of questions. We
Okay.
Go.
All right, well, let me leave you with that. I think you've got a good start. Roger's going to take you in his capable hands for the next 7 weeks and teach you a lot more about the 7 rays. But I think this will be a start.
Thank you, Jerry.
Didn't Moria say that he looked for Blavatsky for 300 years before he found
They said nearly 100 years. They said we have been searching for almost 100 years for someone,
of that
because they were
caliber?
looking specifically for a Westerner. Their objective was to bring the Asian, Oriental, ancient wisdom teachings to the West. Because we, in our very fifth root race, analytical minds, tend to be more like the 5th ray. Unless you prove it to us, we don't believe it. This is kind of the European and American way. We're very precise in that. And Alice Bailey points out that, wait, is it Alice Bailey? I believe it is. Yes, in the book Telepathy, she says the Asian body, physical body, is better adapted for telepathy and for this type of learning than the Western body is. So that was part of the problem, is that they couldn't find someone who was in a Western body that they could communicate with telepathically, and that was pure enough that they could actually use her physical body at times, step into it, so to speak, because they can't use just anyone. It has to be a very purified body. So even though she ate meat and smoked cigarettes, that didn't seem to be a problem. So we can get a clue from that as to what purification is. It's not just physical purification, it's your emotions. And Alice Bailey also said that HPB did not have an astral body. That meant that she had overcome that.
What you saw is what you got.
Now there is a mystery about that, because she could become violently angry at times. And the masters said there is something, they kind of hinted that one of her principles was being held hostage, so to speak, in Shigatse, in Tibet, that they, after the several years of training that she had to do on site, they sent her back out into the world. But in order to maintain that link, a part of her being had to stay there. And that was what caused this disturbance in her emotions. And Alice Bailey said she did not have an astral body, so it wasn't her own creations, it was this body that she was having to deal with that was reacting. So there is a mystery, and more than one mystery. And one of the things they said in the Mahatma letters that I found very interesting was that K.H. told Hume and Sinnott that when they were ready, they could have the real McCoy, the Beit Truli, as they called it in Tibetan. Meaning that HPB would sit and talk with them for 1 hour as the real individual. So in other words, they were going to restore her to her full capacity for 1 hour. It obviously required an effort on their part, and they had to watch carefully. And they never took him up on the offer. They said, "You missed out." She said, "You had the opportunity and you didn't take me up on it." So another mystery. Many mysteries. But we've got work to do. Any other? Yes.
Try this question. Why was Theosophy put into the world at such a high intellectual level when the vast majority of the people in the earth couldn't even grasp the extent that was being given? Why wasn't it put in a simpler form?
Well,
Now, I'm asking this question very crudely, so please.
no, it's
be sure not to-
perfectly valid. I've heard other people say that Theosophy is something that's very, very interesting, but this person said, I swear that every writer on Theosophy tries to make it as obtuse as possible, as difficult to comprehend as possible, because I've never found a book yet where I can understand what it's about, and yet I'm convinced that there's some real value to it. So yes, that's exactly right, and here's the answer. Are you ready? It is not intellectual. It cannot be conveyed in words. The principles exist on a higher level than the concrete mind. All we can do is give hints and indications, symbols sometimes, that kind of point that direction. What do the Buddhists say? The finger pointing to the moon is not the moon. All you can do is point in that direction. So all of this writing, all of the secret doctrine, treatise on cosmic fire, if you've ever tried to read that, they're little hints and signposts. You will not get the comprehension until you learn Raja Yoga, which is real meditation. We talk about meditation, but it's not really meditation. Raja Yoga is very scientific, and it will take you all the way through to the 7 realms of samadhi, and that's where the adepts work. They do their work during samadhi, and in a state of very high concentrated consciousness. I don't know anyone personally that I really feel has reached anything but possibly here and there the very lowest level of that. It takes several lifetimes of arduous work to make that happen. And most of us are doing well if we can even get to the first part of meditation, which is concentration. If you can even concentrate, you're doing well. And that takes decades to learn properly. So true meditation will take you to samadhi, and it's only when you reach that stage that you will begin to comprehend to some extent these teachings. So what we should be talking about more than the concept, probably, is how to get to that stage. And I'll put a shameless plug in here for our book.
Well, I've got it, and I've read it, and I admire it, yeah.
All right.
What's the name of that Roger that you just said?
Raja Yoga.
Yoga, R-A-J.
Paul and I gave some talks in New York and Connecticut and New Jersey about Raja Yoga, the science, what is it? The science of
Yoga.
Yoga. Well, he just calls it the science of yoga, but it's really Raja Yoga. Raja Yoga, all yoga comes from Raja Yoga. So, Hatha Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, they all come from the aphorisms of Patanjali. And if you read those, and specifically this book, The Science of Yoga, is written by someone who knows what he's talking about. It's not an easy read, but it's all included in here.
I haven't finished it.
This one? Oh, okay. Well, take your time. Take your time. But honestly, we tried as much as possible to teach the principles of Raja Yoga in this book. What you need to know to seriously work on your character and on your personal purification to reach that point where you can receive the teachings intuitively. That's where it comes from, during meditation and through intuition. You cannot convey it in words. All you can do is point in the right direction. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, but I did also want to add that, quite frankly, Blavatsky's a little bit beyond my comprehension, but I have read Alice Bailey, and I find that that is, you know, on the top end of my scope. But Annie Besant is much easier to understand, and I felt that it was a kind of a step down in understanding as time went by, as these other authors got into it and sort of brought it down to everybody, sort of day-to-day understanding somewhat.
Some have brought it down too much. They've simplified it too much and sort of threw the baby out.
Well, there is an audience for it.
There's an audience for it, and there's a place for it.
Absolutely.
I cut my teeth on the works of Leadbeater. When I discovered this book, I bought every book I could get my hands on that he wrote and read them voraciously. And that was my start. But today I don't read any of his works, except once in a while I'll refer back to this one. But any of the others, I don't read. Annie Besant, I probably shouldn't say it, I've never read completely one of her books. Of course, Krishnamurti said the same thing about all Theosophical books. He said, I've never been able to read any of them entirely. I can understand the secret doctrine. I don't even pretend to. I delve into it once in a while and do the best I can to make some sense of it. But what I realized that it is really our character that is far more important. And when it is important for you to know specific information in order to accomplish some good in the world, it'll come to you. That's when I get information, is during meditation. In the middle of the night, I just all of a sudden understanding some concept that I couldn't quite get before, it just all of a sudden is clear. It will arrive when you're ready for it. What's the saying? When the pupil is ready, the master appears. Well, this is not just one time, this is at any time. At any time when you have achieved that level where you need a certain kind of specific information in order to continue your progress, it will come to you. But you have to have made the preliminary steps. You have to have done as much as possible, created the dauntless courage, the spotless purity, and the strong intellect. Most people don't think of strong intellect as being a requirement for spiritual development. It is absolutely essential. Without it, you cannot practice discernment. You have to be able to see things and understand them in a far better manner than almost anyone else in the world. These adepts are extremely intelligent beings. Extremely intelligent. And their pupils have to be intelligent too, because they are future adepts. So, strong intellect you cannot avoid. If you feel you need more intellect, then learn a language, turn the TV off, stop all of the non-essential parts of your life and get to work. Do something that will create some strong intellect in your life. That's all I'm here. All right. Any other last questions before we let you go?
DK, is he above a ray classification, or do you know what ray he is?
I believe he's on the second ray because he is the right-hand guy of Kutumi, KH. And the masters will sometimes, even though, for example, Alice Bailey was on the second ray, he passed her over to DK for a long period of time. And, wait, or was she a master of Moria?
Who?
Alice Bailey.
No.
Here. Well, I know, but she was, anyways, some of the masters, even though one pupil is their pupil, will sometimes assign them to another one temporarily for a number of years because of different reasons. Sometimes they just don't have the time. Sometimes they're working on certain projects that this other master happens to be more in tune with. But there are many reasons. So these pupils sometimes get shunted back and forth between different masters, but not on a daily basis. It's for a period of years and for a specific reason sometimes. All right? All right, well, so next week is the movie?
We'll do a movie with John Algo, and then we'll start opening it up with some talks about where we're going to take the classes.
Okay. And Paul and I are off to Portland this weekend to enlighten the citizens of Portland. we're talking about Bardo. Everybody knows what Bardo is, right? No? Bardo is a Tibetan word, and it's the period between death of the physical body and the next incarnation. So that's Bardo. That's the morning talk. The afternoon talk is on the power of the eternal now.
Please make sure you get it on YouTube.
Oh, okay. He's going to be filming it, so yes.
I just got the new toy here.
No, next weekend.
We're testing it right now. Yeah.
Yes, no, he's going to be filming next week.
Okay, good.
So yes, we have. We're trying to get our website up to date as far as videos of the talks that we're giving, and on YouTube also. We're getting them on there. All right, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.